Have you ever wondered how many women around you are quietly being the invisible glue that holds their families together? Their existence is a support for everyone, yet they themselves have no presence of their own. Today, I'm going to tell you the story of one such woman. Her name is Wendy Dixon. She's 32 years old. 3 weeks ago, at their 40th anniversary party, in front of 30 guests, her own parents showed her exactly where she stood in the family. They announced a family trip to Hawaii and then said to Wendy, "You don't need to know the flight time. You're not part of this trip. Someone has to stay behind and take care of the kids." 30 pairs of eyes. 30 witnesses. The moment her family told her she wasn't truly family at all. But that night, Wendy made a decision. Because she had a secret. A secret she had been building for 3 years. And now it was finally time to use it. This isn't just a story about a woman leaving. This is the story of a woman finding herself. This is Wendy's story. The Dixon family home is a picture of suburban success. A white colonial in Boston with a perfectly manicured lawn that whispers, "We have arrived." My father, Harold, is a retired bank manager. My mother, Patricia, treats maintaining the family's social reputation as a full-time career. Then there's my sister, Megan, 3 years younger, married to a corporate lawyer, mother of 2 perfect children, and the undisputed star of the family show. And then there's me, Wendy, the reliable one, the flexible one, the one with the modest part-time accounting job, and the 10-year-old Honda Civic that always gets banished to the street to make room for Megan's shiny SUV in the driveway. My role was clearly defined. I was the help. Thanksgiving, I arrived at dawn to cook. Christmas, I wrapped all the presents. My niece and nephew's parties, I was the planner, entertainer, and cleanup crew, all rolled into one. My contributions were always expected, rarely thanked, and never considered equal to Megan's. The breaking points were countless, but they were small. A world's best ant apron gifted to me for Christmas, to be worn while I worked. The way my mother introduced Megan by her husband's impressive job title. While I was just Wendy, she helps out. The constant reassurances that family comes first, which really meant my needs always came last. What they never saw, what I never let them see, was the secret life I was building in the shadows. 3 years ago, after a devastating breakup, I wandered into a pawn shop and bought a used camera on a whim. That camera became my salvation. I started photographing people society overlooks. The elderly, the tired, the quiet strugglers. I called the series Invisible Women and posted the photos anonymously online. To my shock, over 12,000 people followed. They saw the beauty I saw. They made me feel seen. Then, 3 weeks before the anniversary party, the impossible happened. A prestigious gallery in California reached out. They were interested in my work. I was terrified to hope, so I sat on the email, paralyzed by the lifelong belief that good things didn't happen to people like me. The only person who knew was my Aunt Ruth, my mother's disappointing sister who chose art and a quiet life in California over convention. She was the one who had secretly encouraged me, and she was the one who finally gave me permission. You don't need anyone's permission to pursue what you love. The night of the anniversary party was a masterpiece of family theater. I had spent days preparing, writing place cards, ordering flowers, coordinating with caterers. I worked in jeans while the house filled with 30 guests in cocktail attire. I circulated with appetizers, refilled glasses, and babysat my niece and nephew so Megan and her husband could mingle. Then came the moment. My father stood, glowing with pride, and announced the family trip to Hawaii. The whole family. For a second, my heart lifted. Palm trees, ocean air, an actual vacation. I stepped forward, smiling, and asked the simplest question, "What time is our flight?" The room didn't just go quiet. It went cold. My father looked at me with confusion. "You don't need to know, Wendy," he said, his voice stripping away any pretense. "You're not part of this trip. Someone has to stay behind and take care of the kids." 30 pairs of eyes watched as my mother nodded in agreement, explaining that Megan deserved a break. I stood there, holding a dirty dessert plate, being publicly demoted from daughter to domestic staff. I did what I always did. I smiled, said I understand, and retreated to the kitchen. But as I scrubbed pots alone, listening to their laughter, the last piece of my old self finally shattered. I wasn't hurt. I was clear. They didn't see me as family. They saw me as a utility, and utilities can be turned off. Later that night, using my mother's laptop to send a work file, I found the proof I didn't know I was looking for. An email chain between her and Megan titled, Hawaii Arrangements. Wendy situation. My mother's words, she doesn't have anything important to do anyway. It's like having free help. Megan's reply, she'll probably feel useful for once. It's kind of sad. Free help. Kind of sad. In that moment, the fear vanished. I called Aunt Ruth. Her answer was simple. I have a spare room. The gallery is 20 minutes away. Come. 2 days later, I told my family I was leaving. The manipulation began immediately. Guilt, anger, tears, warnings that I'd end up alone and bitter like Aunt Ruth. But their words had lost their power. I packed my car with 3 suitcases and my camera, leaving the world's best aunt apron on the kitchen counter. As I drove away from Boston at sunrise, I wasn't running away. For the first time, I was driving toward myself. The drive from Boston to the Pacific Ocean felt less like a journey across a country and more like a migration of the soul. For 5 days, my Honda Civic, the same car my mother always shooed to the street, became my sanctuary. It carried not just my suitcases and camera equipment, but the fragile, newborn shell of the person I was deciding to become. I didn't rush. I slept in roadside motels with neon signs that flickered through thin curtains. I ate pancakes at diners where waitresses called me honey and didn't ask about my family. In the vast, silent stretches of the Midwest, with nothing but cornfields and sky, I finally allowed myself to think. Not about what I was leaving behind, but about what I had actually left behind. It wasn't a family, not in the way that mattered. It was a system, a carefully constructed hierarchy where my value was transactional, measured in tasks completed and inconveniences absorbed. My leaving wasn't an act of rebellion. It was a withdrawal from a contract I had never agreed to. Somewhere in Nebraska, I pulled over at a rest stop as the sun began its spectacular descent. The sky erupted in hues of fire and amethyst, painting the endless prairie in a light so profound it felt sacred. On instinct, I grabbed my camera, the old trusty Canon from the pawn shop. I didn't just photograph the sunset. I focused on the frayed edge of a picnic table, the lone weed growing through a crack in the asphalt, my own shadow stretching long and solitary toward the horizon. It was my first series as a free woman. Liminal spaces. The images weren't just pretty. They were honest. They spoke of transitions, of being between one state and another, of beautiful, terrifying emptiness full of potential. My phone buzzed intermittently, a persistent anchor to the world I was escaping. I turned it on only for GPS. Each time, a flood of notifications would appear. Voicemails from my mother, her tone evolving from frosty indignation to wounded martyrdom. Your father is barely speaking, Wendy. The stress is affecting his blood pressure. Is this what you want? Texts from Megan, veering between guilt and accusation. The kids keep asking for you. Oliver cried last night because you're not here to read his dinosaur book the right way. How do I explain that you chose yourself over them? The most telling message came the day they left for Hawaii. A single text from Megan, a photograph of a chaotic kitchen counter, littered with sunscreen bottles, swim toys, and half-packed suitcases. The caption, trying to do it all alone. Could have used your help. No, miss you. No, wish you were here. Just a stark reminder of my abandoned function. I didn't reply. Instead, I took a self-portrait in the motel's speckled mirror. My hair messy from the drive, dark circles under my eyes, but a calm, resolved set to my mouth. I sent it to Aunt Ruth. Her reply was instant. Now that is the face of an artist. Drive safe. Your room is waiting. Crossing the state line into California was a physical sensation. The air changed, growing softer, carrying a faint, salty tang. When the Pacific Ocean first appeared on the horizon, an impossible, infinite sheet of blue meeting the sky. I had to pull over again. I sat on the hood of my car, the warm metal beneath me, and let the tears come. They weren't tears of sadness for the past, but an overwhelming release of pressure, the sound of a held breath finally exhaled after 32 years. Aunt Ruth's Cafe, the ceramic cup, was nestled on a side street in Carmel by the Sea, looking as if it had been sketched by an illustrator of fairy tales. With its blue shutters, cobblestone path, and window boxes overflowing with bougainvillea, it was the antithesis of our stark, imposing colonial in Boston. Ruth was waiting on the porch, not in an apron, but in a paint-splattered smock over jeans. She didn't say much. She just opened her arms and held me as the last remnants of the journey's tension melted from my shoulders. My room above the cafe was small, sun-drenched, and perfect. A simple bed with a white quilt, a wooden desk under a window that framed a sliver of ocean view, and empty shelves waiting to be filled. The Wi-Fi password is create something. All one word, Ruth said with a wink. No capital letters. Art shouldn't be formal. The rhythm of my new life began the very next morning. At 5:30 a.m., the smell of roasting coffee beans and baking pastries wafted up through the floorboards. My new alarm clock. I worked the morning shift, learning the rituals of the espresso machine, the names of the regulars, an eclectic mix of retired professors, working artists, and wealthy tourists who appreciated Ruth's authentic vibe, and the simple satisfaction of a job well done that ended when my shift ended. There was no taking work home, no silent expectation that I'd stay late to finish polishing the silver. My afternoons were mine. The first thing I did was finally reply to Marcus Coleman, the gallery owner, with a confident, professional email agreeing to a meeting. Then, I set up a makeshift studio in the corner of my room. I edited the hundreds of photos from my cross-country drive, the Liminal Spaces series growing stronger with each selection. The meeting with Marcus was 2 days later. Coastal Light Gallery was all clean lines, white walls, and hushed, respectful silence broken only by the soft clicks of someone adjusting a frame. Marcus himself defied every stereotype. In his 60s, with a wild mane of silver hair and eyes that seemed to miss nothing, he wore a linen shirt and greeted me not with pretentious air kisses, but a firm, paint-stained handshake. "Wendy," he said, leading me past stunning landscapes and abstract sculptures. Ruth wasn't exaggerating. But more importantly, your work isn't exaggerating. He stopped before a large monitor where he had pulled up my Instagram portfolio. "This," he said, pointing to the photo of the elderly woman at the bus stop, the one that had first caught his attention. "This isn't a photograph. It's a biography. You don't just capture a face. You capture the weight of a lifetime of being politely ignored. That is a radical act of seeing." We spoke for 2 hours. Not just about art, but about the stories behind the art. For the first time, I told someone the full, unvarnished truth, not just about the camera, but about the family that made me need it. I told him about the anniversary party, the emails, the free help. He listened not as a therapist, but as a curator of human experience. "Your new series," he said finally, leaning back in his chair. "Liminal Spaces. It's a direct continuation. You've turned the camera on the geography of transition because that's where you're living. It's powerful, Wendy. Raw but powerful." He slid a contract across the desk. "I want to do the solo show. 15 pieces from Invisible Women and Liminal Spaces combined. We'll print them large, frame them simply. Opening in 6 weeks. 60% to you. This isn't a favor. This is business. Your work has value." I signed the contract in the gallery's office, the afternoon sun casting long, hopeful rectangles of light on the floor. The pen felt heavy and significant in my hand. Wendy Dixon, artist. As I walked back to the cafe, the contract tucked in my bag, I felt a strange new sensation. Ownership. Of my time, my talent, my future. While I was immersed in proofs and frame selections, test prints and artist statements, my family was in Hawaii, learning the hard arithmetic of my absence. The reports trickled back to me through fragmented, frustrated texts that I would read once and delete. "Megan, day 2. Sophie won't eat the hotel pasta. What did you put in the sauce at home? Derek is no help. Mother. Day 4. The concierge here is utterly incompetent. Not like having family help. You always managed things so well. Megan. Day 5. Oliver's swim goggles broke. Where did you buy the backups? I can't find the receipt. Mother. Day 6. This vacation is more work than staying home. I'm exhausted. There were no questions about my well-being. No curiosity about California. Just a litany of logistical failures. A stark inventory of all the small, invisible things I had always done. Their struggle was my validation. I hadn't been incompetent or unworthy. I had been essential. And they had mistaken my essentialness for disposability. The climax of their